country called the USA, and we fly our flag cause we're proud and free, we're Americans. Red, white, and blue is our way of life. Never back down from a challenge or a fight. Nature provides, God gives the rights, we're Americans. We make up America, it's amazing America.
Hey, welcome to the Sgt Frank Show, and today we have a former law enforcement officer, and we were having a phone conversation about situations where police officers are dealing with stress and everything else in life. We came up with an idea that would be really great, and I'll just kind of let you tell he can tell his story about getting help when you're dealing with different issues in law enforcement and how it affects you and your family and everything else. So we're going to have, and we're not going to use his real name, so we're going to call him John, and his initials are CH, and he knows what that stands for. So John, tell us a little bit about your story and why you think it's important to bring it out there to the masses of our blue family.
Well, you know, like you said, I was a policeman. I was critically injured in the line of duty. I was retired, and I felt like a little abandoned because I didn't talk to most of my guys anymore, and I really missed the job. I missed standing on the line and just being a policeman, catching bad guys and standing between good and evil. But after I got hurt, well, even before I got hurt, I had a problem with alcohol. But after I got hurt, it was a tremendous problem, severe PTSD and a TBI and all that stuff. One day I sat on my front porch with my shotgun. I don't know how much to get into that, but it wasn't a good day. Obviously, alcohol was involved. I ended up in rehab. It was a very uncomfortable experience for me. The people who were in rehab there was a lot of anti-police sentiment in there. Even, you know, some of the staff gave me dirty looks. There were guys in there that wouldn't shake my hand, wouldn't talk to me. You know, then there were guys that were on the other side, you know, that they appreciated me and stuff like that, but I was mostly alone. So the guy who got me into rehab, you know, what you and I were talking about, he took me to a restaurant, bought me dinner, and we talked. He lives 10 minutes from me. He covers, you know, a large area where I live for his company that does treatment centers.
Right.
And he's like, oh, man, you know, I really feel like I made a friend for life with you. And trust me, you know, rehab's going to be the best thing, you know, you ever did for yourself and this and that. So I went to rehab. It was an uncomfortable 28 days, but it was totally worth it. Like, looking back, you know, I think today I'm coming up at the end of this month on 5 months sober.
Congratulations, brother. That's a great thing. I'm so proud of you, man, for number one, sharing your story. Number two, for the hard work, because it's not easy, man. And people dealing with this situation all across the country, our brothers and sisters in blue, you know, we see horrific things. I know that you've dealt with horrific things and incidents. I tell people that being a police officer, you're a social sponge. You know, you absorb, and nobody ever squeezes us out until we retire, and then or medically we get retired. And they just kind of kick us out the back door.
Right.
You know, if you're in trouble, you know, who do you call?
Exactly.
You don't pick up the phone and call the NFL. You hit 911 and the police show up. And you know what's funny is, you know, we drive like maniacs to get there to save you. And we don't care if you hate us or you love us. We do it the same way. When the police scanner doesn't say, okay, we have a call at so-and-so address, and yeah, they don't support cops, so take your time to get there. They don't say that. Yeah. They're like, hey, man, lady in trouble, screaming for help. And we're like, okay, here's our white hats, jump on our horses, and we ride to the scene, and we we take care of business. And then Monday morning, they're like, oh, well, you weren't very nice to that guy that beat his wife. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. She got 52 stitches in her face. I'm sorry I wasn't nicer to him, you know, washing the blood off his hands. My bad. I'll take my suspension day. See you later. Bye.
Right. My incident was I was responding to rescue a guy who crashed his car into a lake. Of course, it was a bad part of town, and everybody came out to watch the show. He tried to leave the scene. We ended up fighting. That was the last day of my career. You know, he bashed my head in with my own baton. Like you said, the call came out, the lights and sirens went on, and I knew the car was underwater, so I was balls to the wall. I got to get there. I was rushing to the end of my career. You know, a lot of guys rush to their death, not just dealing with alcohol, but I've considered leaving this country. I love this country very much, but the way things have gotten, just politics in general and the American culture, really wanted to leave the country, try to put it all behind me. I've done a lot of research on other countries, and it's either you live in a poor country where, you know, you can afford things, but, you know, you're not real safe, or you live in a more wealthy country where your safety is you're safe, but, you know, you live in a shoebox. Fortunately, I have 4 children and a wife, a couple dogs, and we're not going to fit in a shoebox. But like we were talking about, just venting, being able to talk to other cops on a regular basis. You know, I looked for a police-based AA program.
Right.
Where I live, the city I live in is somewhere around 250,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't exist. I called all the local large agencies. I called unions, and doesn't exist. I know there is one, you know, I think it's called Bottles and Badges, or Badges and Bottles, or something like that. But they're only in, you know, major cities like Philly and New York, places like that. But even just when there is something that happens that between law enforcement and the community or whatever, and of course, you know, cops do their job every single time, and the agency is investigating, and they do the same investigation every time, which is the way they should do it. Even though we know our guy is right, we're not releasing the tapes until we're done.
Right.
So, of course, you know, people in the community have to burn the city, throw Molotov cocktails and this and that and the other, start shooting people. And then 2 weeks later, when it comes out that the cop was right for what he did, it's not news anymore. It doesn't make the media money.
Yeah, once the sensation's gone, they don't care about the story anymore. But, you know, here's the thing. Even after the story is not sensational anymore, there's still human beings that are dealing with it, and some of us are dealing with it for the rest of our lives.
Right.
And that's something that the media definitely doesn't want to report. And going back to your looting situation you're talking about, I don't understand how you're protesting for democracy by breaking a window and stealing a 40-inch TV, running down the street with it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how that's a protest for democracy. It kind of sounds like it's you know, criminal situation to me. But that's just me. You know, I'm an old dumb cop. I don't get that, but
right.
maybe some of our viewers can explain it to me one day. You know, when you're talking about you can't find an organization, you know, and I'm going to put this out there, and this is, I'm sure my friends are going to say I'm crazy to do this, but I'm going to give out my personal cell phone number, which is 561-523-2110. And if you're in a situation like this and you just don't have anywhere else to turn, you're in that dark place, you can't come up with a solution for your issue, and you're thinking about a destructive behavior, a destructive scenario, call me, and I will find somebody in your area to help you. Because as a Blue family, you know, with the organization Adopt a Cop USA, the reason I started this was I was tired of going to police funerals all across the country. The person I was with at at the time was like, "Why are you driving to San Antonio, Texas?" And I said, "Well, they executed a police officer in the driveway of his headquarters." And I go, "This is not an attack on an agency. This is an attack on America. And we need to do something to stop this slaughter of the men and women who are out there protecting and serving us." You know, and I met you on a trip, and it was very therapeutic because a lot of the officers on the trip were dealing with situations like we all deal with. And whether you're injured in the line of duty physically, we've all been injured psychologically. I don't care. You know, and a lot of people, we make a joke about it when you retire. It's like, I don't think you can get a job as a cop anywhere because you'll never pass the psych. You've seen too much. You can't answer those questions objectively anymore because you know the ramifications of actions of people and how it turns out. So there's no way you're going to answer that question the same way you did when you were trying to get the job as a police officer. Because now, just like our children, we've been infected by the society and the social injustice out there. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show today and talking about your situation. Tell us more about how you overcame the problem with alcohol.
Well, so I got out of rehab and I started going to AA meetings, which are incredibly helpful. Me personally, I think that any alcoholic out there can benefit in huge ways. But I started noticing, I was a pretty miserable person. PTSD and alcohol, the way society is, I was just so negative. Once I got off of alcohol, I started realizing that I was taking enjoyment in regular things in life that other people who, just are normal, that they enjoy. Just watching a movie with my kids or, something where I would have otherwise been, I need a beer. I'll be back in a couple hours.
Well, 57 times of watching Frozen will make anybody want a beer, Mike. John. Don't get me wrong. I love Disney movies, but, I can only take so much. And
so I started, instead of my brain, because one thing they say is you're teaching your own brain that, okay, I'm experiencing stress. What do? The body's reaction is, okay, I need this substance to help me deal with my stress. And in rehab, they gave us a lot of tools to help deal with your own stress. So if I could just get myself through the moment, then I could go back to enjoying things like my kids or my wife or, finding something to enjoy together.
Can you share with us a little bit about those steps? What the process of that, how to kind of de-escalate that situation for yourself? And I'm sure it's different for everybody.
Yeah, it is different for everybody. We did yoga and stuff in there, and that worked for a tremendous amount of people. There were several people in the facility that yoga transformed their lives. They were just like, no matter what, when I get out of here, I'm continuing with yoga. Now, for me, that's not my thing, but they taught, a lot of the breathing exercises. And I was always like, yeah, right, breathing, give me a break. That really helped me, just trying to get out of my own head and think about things I'm thankful for, to pray. Those are things that really help me in the moment, where I'm like, you know what, I need to sit back and realize how lucky I am in life. I am actually lucky to be alive. Even though my car is old, I'm thankful for it.
You know who appreciates your car the most?
Who's that?
The guy walking.
That's true. That's true.
And, you're talking about the gratitude, and I listen to a lot of motivation in the morning. When I first wake up in the morning to kind of push out some of the poison, I listen to motivational things in the morning to get me on track. And Tony Robbins talks about, he does a 3.5 or 4.5 minutes of gratitude processing in his head about where he's at and what he has to be thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? And I want to go back to where you were talking about leaving the country, and I want to embrace that conversation a little bit more, because I don't want you to leave. I want you to stick around. And I think that if we all stick together and stand up together, and we can put the United back in the United States if we all work together, because, that's what team stands for. Together, each achieves more. Having, you come on the show and talking about your story and the techniques that you're using to help your life and your family put it back together, because, law enforcement will destroy a family in a heartbeat if you're not ready for it. For all the people that are looking to become police officers or deputies or go into a law enforcement career, this is such great training for you, because if you prepare yourself for the worst, when you finally are exposed to it, you already have a leg up on it, because now you know what to expect. It's when we get blindsided that usually we fail. We go through all this crazy training in the police academy. They teach you how to shoot guns. You drive a car around. You learn how to write ticket. You do all this training, right? All the law stuff and all that great stuff. There's not a single class that talks about stress and how to deal with it the right way. How to get together with your friends, how to keep your family together, because even in certain families, you're going to be ostracized because of your job. The cops here, everybody act right, the cops here. How many times have we heard that? It's like, you know what? If somebody was breaking the house, killing you right now, you'd be happy the cops here.
That drives me nuts. And then when things like that happen, I get set off, and that's when I really need somebody to talk to, like a cop, like, man, this guy just said this. I can't believe he said it, blah, 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 blah. And for someone to be like, dude, I totally understand, and in this country, there's the silent majority that it drives me nuts that they won't stand up. Private companies out there, they're like, well, we really do want to support you, but we just can't take that financial risk.
I agree with you. And I had a gym owner tell me that one day. He's like, well, it's very, it's very political. I'm like, what? What'd you say? He's like, well, I don't want to ostracize. He was like afraid of losing customers. And I was like, what customers do you want in your business that don't care about this country?
But it's depicted in movies and in the media and stuff like that in such a disgusting way that is so untrue. I read an article one time. The woman writing the article was pretty anti-police, and she went on a ride-along with some police officers when it was bedtime for kids, around probably around 8 or so. These guys got on their phones and did video chats with their children saying goodnight. She said she saw these masculine cops turn into teddy bears instantly. People forget that cops are people, soldiers are people, firemen are people. She said right there, she's like, I'll never write another article against the police again. I saw the human being in these people, these cops, and apologized pretty much for what she had previously written.
Yeah, I think people forget there's a human being behind the badge, and that's something that we try to do a lot is to show that with our different programs that we show on our Facebook pages and our other social media outlets is all the great work that our law enforcement officers are doing out there. And it's something that we're striving to do more of, get out there and celebrate the good that our officers are doing on a daily basis.
Oh, yeah.
The empathy, you're talking about the soldiers and everything. Well, law enforcement in our country are domestic soldiers is the way I look at it. We're the domestic soldiers fighting a battle every day on the streets, just like our other soldiers that are overseas. And, Dave Grossman wrote an awesome book called Sheepdogs, Our Nation's Warriors. And in the book, it's written for kids, and I use it in my program in school. And I show the kids, why we're doing what we're doing, who's doing what we're doing, and why it's important that we do what we do, because they're not getting the information anywhere else. I guarantee you that's not part of the curriculum list that their school is buying. And when I talked to the colonel about it, he was very excited about it. And if you want to grab a copy of that book for your children, it's David Grossman, and it's Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, and it's called Sheepdogs, Our Nation's Warriors. And it talks about police officers and firefighters. But you know what? There's another big group in there that he talks about, and it's our teachers, because our teachers mold the fabric that our country is made of. And
absolutely,
we should be, just like law enforcement officers and firefighters, our teachers should be the highest paid individuals in our country, because what they're doing is they're forming America today for a better tomorrow. And I think a lot of times, parents that go into school, and it goes, I went to a private school, and my mom, when we went to meet the teachers, she's like, yeah, if he gets out of line, you beat the crap out of him. I'm like, Mom, don't say that. This is a Catholic school, and they're going to beat the crap out of me anyways. And, I was like, thanks. That kind of set the tone. But, I got beat up a lot in school because I went to a school in San Antonio, and I was the only white kid in my school. I was the only white kid in my elementary school, male. And I had no backup. It was a bad situation. And eventually, I learned to one of my best weapons was my voice and talking to people. And once I learned how to start communicating, because I had to do it out of survival, because I was like, physically I could not win. One person against 5 is not a good odd. You're going to lose.
Yeah.
And I think I was in about 7th grade. And I was finally fighting this kid one-on-one. I was like, wow, this is finally, at least I got a 50-50 chance. And this kid pulls out this big, giant, like Crocodile Dundee knife. And I'm like, are you kidding? I'm finally on the same footing with a guy. And he pulls out a big old gigantic knife. And I was like, dang, for real?
Yeah.
And I just want to say, and I'm not condoning violence, and I'm not saying that that's the way to handle things, But I beat the living tar out of that kid with that knife. And while I was de-escalating his head on the concrete slab, my friends pulled me off him. And I was like, don't ever pull a knife on me again. And I was like, but when we were kids, that's the way we handled things in school, and that's okay. And I'm not like, again, I'm not condoning violence in school or any of that stuff. So take it easy on the emails and the phone calls. But it was a fist thing. Now kids have that same conflict, and they bring a 45 to school,
Right.
and
Right.
they try to even up the odds with that. And honestly, with our conflict resolution programs that we are implementing, you don't even have to get to that level. And that's the
Right.
reason that we're doing a lot of our programs in elementary schools and pre-K, is because we need to teach our kids there's other options than violence. And sometimes, how many times as a police officer that you had some kind of beef with somebody and you just say, hey man, can we sit down and talk about this? And you guys
Right.
handled it, or and usually it never came to anything more than that. And they just didn't want to get your side. Like if you shared a car with somebody and they didn't put gas in it, oh, let me tell you something. We would have a conversation about that. And, that's the biggest problem that I see. We sat on a panel the other day here in Palm Beach County on the Rich Stevens show. And there was a guy who was talking about, I wasn't a real big fan of police officers. And I said, you know what? With everything I'm hearing here, the biggest problem I see between everything is a lack of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many times I would be, in the office and somebody would come in and all they want to do is have somebody hear their side of the story. And most
Right.
of the times I could handle it at my level. But sometimes people come in there predisposed. They just want to complain for them. And it doesn't matter what you say. I think getting back to the topic that we were talking about before with the police officers dealing with these stressors and when you retire, your blue family is not gone. And a lot of times agencies, they don't celebrate their retired officers and keep them close to the family. And when you walk out that door for the last time, and I know you experienced it, you kind of lose a little bit of your identity, because if that's all you ever wanted to do your whole life and now you're no longer doing that, it's a
Right.
big change for you.
Right. I was just watching something on TV, or even talking to it might have been the guy he's a barber now, but he was in the Navy and did some stuff in Iraq, and we were talking about PTSD, and the word that you used, identity, it really does become part of your identity. I mean, the second question when you meet anyone in this country, when you're being introduced, hi, what's your name? What do you do? Is always the second question.
Right.
So whether you're, a doctor, a garbage man, a cop, whatever, a farmer, whatever it may be, that's your identity, or a big part of it. And when mine was taken forcibly, but, a lot of guys due to age and health and stuff like
Easy on the age thing, bro. Easy on the age thing.
Especially health reasons. A huge
Right.
killer of cops is their own hearts, but
Right.
it's part of who you are, and it's very difficult to move on with life. Who am I? I mean, I'm a dad. I'm a dad, and I'm me also, but it's almost like experiencing a death of part of yourself.
Right. No, that's true. That's true.
It's crazy, and in the academy, they're like, don't let it become who you are. Well,
Yeah. Easy to say.
after the first time that you call for help and to life or deather, and you hear those sirens in the background, wow, this is my family. This
Yeah.
is who I identify with. These are my brothers, and then even your own brother, by family,
Right.
he doesn't understand it. And so, yeah, identity is such a huge part of it.
No, I agree, and it's something that they don't prepare you for at all. As a human being, you're going to be changed, and you're going to react differently. And if you don't get the right help at the right time or prepared for it, it's going to affect your life. My very first military funeral was my brother's in high school, and I can tell you that was a life-changing event for me. And luckily for me, I had been through a lot of resiliency training with our Army ROTC in my high school prior to that, and dealing with things that were, as an individual, as a teenager, a young man growing into adulthood. And the story got way worse, because when we rushed to the hospital, and I was a high school senior, this guy. Well, the first thing I walked in there and I'm like, hey, I'm looking for my brother, and they go, he's gone. I mean, the nurse just said it like that. Well, he's gone, and I'm like, well, where's he been? And I was like, well, where's he been transferred to? That's what I was thinking.
Right.
And she goes, no, he's dead. And I was like, what? He's 35 years old. That can't be right. At that point, my mom crumbles into a chair. And then it was the first time I noticed that my sister-in-law was sitting there. I didn't even see her when I walked in, because I was on a mission. Then this guy walks out in scrubs, and he's like, oh, are you the family? And I'm wearing my high school jacket. I mean, it's obvious I'm a high school kid. I've always had a very young-looking face. I know even today. And he goes, well, can you come with me? I'm like, okay. So he walks me into the room with my brother, who's just passed, to identify his body. And I'm like, are you freaking? And I'm just standing there like, is this really happening? I mean, today we would never let that happen. We would never let that happen as law enforcement officers. We would beat the crap out of a person that would do that. So
Right.
I come back after that, and I'm like, wow, that was horrific. Then this priest walks up to me, and he goes, oh, are you the family? And I'm like, I'm not even sure what I should say at this point. I'm like, yes. And he goes, oh, well, can you accompany me? And I'm like, okay. Stupid me, going back to the same place. It didn't dawn on me to ask a question like, well, where are we going? But he took me back in the room, and we did the last rites with my brother. And I'm like, what in the world could have been in what was the rush to do that? And again, not to bash anybody in organized religion or in the medical field, but I can tell you that situation was handled very badly. But thank God I was in a different place in my life, and I was, had gone through all that training with my peer group in the ROTC program, and I had been prepared for tragedies. I didn't know that was going to be the tragedy that I was going to deal with, to tell you the truth. And, my high school senior year was the best year of my life up until that second that lady said that to me. And then I did graduate. I can tell you I didn't graduate with the GPA that I had at the time of my brother's death, but luckily my GPA was high enough that I got through, to graduate and everything. But, it changed my whole life. In law enforcement, that happens on a daily basis, so 365 changes a year. You said it earlier that, dealing with these things on a daily basis will change you. It can't not change you.
Absolutely. I mean,
and it's not always for the best.
No. I mean, I was like, people don't call the police to say good morning and give you a hug. They call the police because something bad has happened, even if it's not a criminal thing. If it's even a traffic crash. And the place I worked was very violent. So a lot of times it was brains, disgusting things. But you get there and there's a traffic homicide and there's parts of bodies, and it's a horrific scene. People who are still alive with their face sheared off, or even, giving CPR in a very bad part of town where they would normally call us, shoot at us, or throw things at us, or
right,
whatever. Well, a 2-month-old isn't breathing. We did CPR on her.
Right.
And she died. I don't know how, like when you're sitting at dinner or whatever with another couple, the conversation somehow gets to something close to that. And you're like, oh, yeah, I gave CPR this one time to a baby and she died. And people just look at you like, what?
Right.
What? And why would you even say that? And it's like inside you, well, I needed to get it off my chest because the conversation brought it up in my mind, and I just felt like I needed to say something. If I was around a group of cops, I could easily say something like that, and I'd be like, yeah, man, I did that too, or I did something very similar. God, it's hard. But these people just look at you like, dude, we're just trying to have dinner here.
Yeah, it's amazing how our society wants us to bury everything, because eventually you can only build up so much. And it's like a volcano. It's going to eventually erupt. You have to vent this stuff out. You have to get it off your chest, like you said. And sometimes your spouse can't understand it. And that's why I think if we have some type of program and where law enforcement officers could actually discuss these things in a safe environment and not be criticized or ridiculed by people that don't understand or have never been in our shoes or in our boots, that we could make some differences in our society with the Blue family that's dealing with this issue on a daily basis, because it's very tough. And I know I've had kids die in front of me, and it's just something that you can never get it out of your head. It's impossible to erase. Unfortunately, our society has not done a great job at handling the people that handle the things for us. Like,
Right.
we love the fact that when we pick up the phone, we know somebody's going to come help. I kind of relate police officers to sharks. We all know that our oceans need sharks for survival. I mean, our planet needs sharks, but we don't necessarily like to be swimming around with them. And it's the same thing when we're driving down the road and a police officer gets behind us. We're like, oh my gosh, am I going the right speed? Is my tag leak? Is everything right? And that's after being a police officer in the military for 28 years, serving the community in our country. I still get that same feeling,
Me too.
And I even got stopped when I was towing our police car on a trailer, and the guy pulled me over, and I was like, okay. And it's 2 in the morning because I travel all across the country, spreading the good word about what we're doing. And I go, hey, man, I'm a retired police officer. I got lots of guns in here. And he goes, okay, well, make sure you keep your hands on the wheel. I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, in my career, out of all the traffic stops, I can't ever think of pulling over some guy towing a police car and saying things like that. So, it just cracks me up that, but this is another generation of law enforcement officers, and I'm not saying he shouldn't have pulled me over, even though there was no infractions to pull me over. I think that we have to kind of sometimes, and I actually put myself in that guy's shoes. I was like, you know what, maybe I need to think like that too. And just because I'm a police officer, what if I'm not a real police officer? What if I stole that truck and trailer? He doesn't know that. So
right, exactly.
We have to be empathetic, even as police officers, for our fellow officers, and go, you know what? Maybe I don't know maybe I don't know what's really going on. Maybe I should just be polite, like I always am. I didn't receive a citation because there was no infraction, but I handled it in the most professional way, and that's all that people want, to be treated fairly and safe. And that's all I think our public is looking for. And I also think that's what our police officers are looking for too. We just want to be treated fairly.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree.
I really appreciate you taking time today. And we're going to continue our brainstorming with this idea of a group that our officers can come to the group. They can talk to fellow officers and at least vent the information out of their heads. And if they need to get further help, we can direct them in the right, area around them, that they can talk to somebody professionally to get the services that they need. There's great programs out there. If you're down around the Orlando area, the Wounded Officer Initiative is an amazing nonprofit that helps police officers and law enforcement officers dealing with different situations. You can reach out to them if you're in the Orlando area, but we're going to do our best on our website, which is about to be relaunched, with more information to, really get the help. So we're going to try to provide those avenues with our fellow officers on our website. And if you ever need to get a hold of me personally, you can reach out to my personal website, which is SGT, like Sergeant, Frank 606 @gmail.com. If you call my phone number, which is 561-523-2110, please leave your name and number to call you back, because I get solicited 1,000,000 times a day, and the solicitors never leave their name and number. So if you want me to call you back, please leave a name and number. I'll have your number, but leave your name, and I will get back to you as soon as I can, depending where I'm at, and we will do everything within our powers to help you. And John, thank you so much for sharing the valuable information that you gleaned in your law enforcement career to help not only our society, but our brothers and sisters in blue.
It was my pleasure and a true honor. Thank you.
Well, I look forward to talking to you again. Please be safe. Help us keep casting hope and catching dreams. And if we're going to do something great in this country, we have to put the United back in the United States and stop tearing each other apart and everybody get on the same page. So thank you again for joining us. God bless you, and God bless America.
You see, I'm one, it's not cool to be a thug. There is nothing good about going selling drugs. The money don't